My half-sister, Sarah, thought it was a constant source of amusement to mock me about my fiancé, Caleb, because she had briefly dated him many years ago. Her jokes finally came to a head when he publicly exposed her long-held obsession with him. This caused my own father to demand that we apologize to her, threatening to skip my wedding entirely if we refused. To give you the full picture, I'm a 28-year-old woman on the verge of marrying my fiancé, Caleb, who is also 28. The center of this storm is my half-sister, Sarah, who is 26. About 6 years ago, long before Caleb and I ever met, he and Sarah connected on a dating app. They went on a handful of dates, but it never developed into anything serious and fizzled out naturally. Fast forward 2 years later, Caleb and I were introduced through mutual friends, and we immediately felt a strong connection. We started dating, and it was only after we were established as a couple that we pieced together his brief history with Sarah. Honestly, it was just a few dates and nothing significant ever happened between them, so it wasn't a major concern for us. Besides, my relationship with Sarah is distant at best. We rarely see each other, and if it weren't for our shared father, I likely wouldn't have any contact with her at all. So this connection seemed like a non-issue. Despite this, my initial instinct was not to invite her to the wedding. However, my father persuaded me, and not wanting to start a fight with him over it, I relented and sent her an invitation. Since then, Sarah has been utterly insufferable. She attended our engagement party and all the pre-wedding gatherings, and at every single one, she has milked her short-lived connection with Caleb as if it were some grand, epic romance. She constantly brings it up, sometimes framed as a joke, sometimes not. I initially thought that if I just ignored her comments, she would eventually get bored and stop. But as time went on, it became painfully obvious that her goal was to deliberately undermine and insult me. This was her weapon of choice, her way of trying to get under my skin by exaggerating the significance of her history with Caleb. It was incredibly annoying for him as well, but with the wedding so close, neither of us wanted to cause any drama. We made a pact to just let it slide, hoping she would eventually take the hint and find some self-respect. That all changed at the rehearsal dinner. She made yet another idiotic joke about her past with Caleb and what he used to be like, and he completely lost his composure. He stood up and yelled at her, announcing to everyone that the real reason he stopped seeing her and ghosted her was because she was unbearably annoying. He reminded her how clingy and obsessive she had been, talking about marriage and their future together after only 2 dates, even though they were both very young at the time. He didn't stop there. He revealed how truly strange he found her when, just a few days after their last date, she had somehow found his mother's phone number and called her, despite the fact he had never even considered introducing her to his parents. She had taken it upon herself to cross a major boundary, which is precisely why he cut things off. He told her she was still overstepping boundaries now because she couldn't handle rejection. He finished by telling her that she reeked of insecurity and that there was something deeply wrong with her. At that, she burst into tears and bolted from the room. My father immediately ran after her, and I could see the fury on his face, directed at both of us. But in my heart, I felt that what Caleb did was necessary. We haven't seen Sarah since that night. She's been holed up in her hotel room, refusing to come out. A few hours ago, my father called Caleb and me to his room. He told us that because we had humiliated Sarah, we were required to apologize to her. If we refused, he would not be attending the wedding and consequently would not be walking me down the aisle. I was floored, arguing that his demand was completely unjust. But with my wedding literally tomorrow, this is the last thing I want to be dealing with. I am struggling to understand my father's perspective and why he sees Caleb and me as the villains in this scenario. At the same time, the thought of him missing my wedding is devastating. So, am I the bad guy for letting my fiancé humiliate my half-sister at our wedding rehearsal dinner? Edit 1. I realize I didn't provide much context about my family dynamics in the original post because I didn't think it was central to the conflict, but I see now that some background might help. My parents did not have a happy marriage. They started dating in college and only got married because my mother became pregnant with me, and both of their families pressured them into it. From what I've been told, the pregnancy was a very difficult time, and it was then that my parents realized they weren't actually in love. When I was 3, my mother had an affair with a friend, and that was the final nail in the coffin for their marriage. She confessed, and they divorced. They managed to co-parent me until I was an adult. My grandparents told me the whole story when I was 15. When I was just 1 year old, my father started dating a woman from his high school, and they soon had Sarah. Despite being close in age, Sarah and I never saw each other much. My father only had me on weekends, and I always sensed a current of jealousy from her. Our relationship was never warm or friendly growing up. As adults, we only interact when absolutely necessary. My mother sadly passed away a few years ago, so my father is the only parent I have left. Regardless of how his marriage to my mom ended, they both did their best to raise me, and my father holds an incredibly important place in my life. He never made me feel second best to Sarah. In fact, he often said he wished he could have had me for more than just weekends. My mother, however, wouldn't allow it. She had initially fought for full custody, and the custody agreement they finally reached was the result of a long, difficult battle. He didn't want to drag it out even further. So, no matter what is happening with Sarah, my relationship with my father is precious to me, and I don't want to see it ruined. Edit 2, I just want to add a couple of clarifications. I've seen some comments being very critical of my mother for what happened between them. I'm not here to claim she was a perfect person. Like anyone, she had her flaws, and my father was far from blameless himself. They had a toxic dynamic. Even though she was the one who cheated, my father has admitted that he pushed her toward it. He was awful to her during most of her pregnancy, completely neglecting her emotionally. He knew she was under immense pressure from her conservative parents, who would not have supported a decision to separate, and he took advantage of that situation, taking her for granted. She had her own issues, picking fights over insignificant things. In return, he made it a point to avoid helping with any household chores, stayed out late every night, and it was just a cycle of them punishing each other. I'm not justifying infidelity, but I understand the situation was incredibly difficult for her too. As for why she fought for full custody and was reluctant to give my father more time, she was furious with him because he started dating another woman while their divorce was still being processed. He also fought her aggressively over the amount of alimony and child support, knowing full well she hadn't been able to build a career after getting pregnant right out of college. She had no independent resources and had to rely on friends to afford her lawyer because her parents weren't supporting her. It was an ugly, messy situation, and honestly, I can't say who was more right or wrong. Update 1. Hello, everyone. It's now around 6:00 p.m., and my father and I have not spoken since our argument last night about Sarah. My fiancé and I discussed everything at length. We read through the comments here and talked with our friends, and the unanimous consensus is that we owe absolutely no one an apology. It turns out Sarah had been getting on everyone's nerves, but people were just being too polite to say anything, not wanting to cause trouble before the wedding. She was clearly begging for negative attention, and she finally got it. She doesn't get to complain about the consequences of her own actions. Furthermore, while it might make a twisted sort of sense for my father to want Caleb to apologize, I cannot fathom why he thinks I need to. If anything, she should be apologizing to me for manufacturing all this drama just to be the center of attention. She knows perfectly well there was nothing substantial to her history with Caleb. It was a few dates 6 years ago that went nowhere. It meant nothing to him, and I'm certain it meant nothing to her either, until she learned I was the one marrying him. Suddenly, it was the only thing she could talk about. And what Caleb said was the unvarnished truth. His entire friend group remembers her as the obsessive girl he briefly dated. His mother even remembers the bizarre phone call. Everyone has been kind enough not to mention it to her face to avoid embarrassing her. So after all the grace she's been shown, for her to have the audacity to repeatedly bring it up just to belittle me is beyond comprehension. If my father can't see that, I don't know what to say. We do not owe her an apology, and we will not be giving one. I'm going to tell him he is more than welcome to come to the wedding and walk me down the aisle. But if he chooses not to, he and Sarah can leave together. It's not the ideal situation, obviously, but this is my wedding day. I will not let anyone, not even my own father, ruin it with their childish temper tantrums. I invited Sarah only as a kindness to him, because he wanted me to acknowledge our sisterly bond. But if he thinks that invitation gives her a free pass to walk all over us, he is sorely mistaken. Update 2. Hey. A few hours after my last post, my fiancé and I went to my father's room. We told him that if he didn't want to attend the wedding and walk me down the aisle, he was free to leave with Sarah. We made it clear that under no circumstances would either of us be apologizing to her. In fact, we would much prefer it if she left. I explained that I had thought it over, and it was undeniable that Sarah had been trying to put me down the entire time she'd been here. Everyone noticed it. It wasn't just in my head. So there was no use in him trying to defend her. All of our friends, several of my cousins, and even my in-laws had commented on how strange her behavior was. What happened at the rehearsal dinner was a direct result of the frustration her actions had caused. She can't act like she was an innocent victim. Everything Caleb said was true, so we saw no reason to apologize. We all agreed that Caleb's delivery was harsh, but he had his reasons, and we stood by them. I told my father that more than anything, I wanted him there to walk me down the aisle, especially since my mother is gone and he's my only parent. It would mean the world to me, but I couldn't force him to be there if he didn't want to, so he was free to go. Saying those words was heartbreaking, but I managed to hold myself together. After he listened, my father explained that he had spoken in the heat of the moment, driven by a paternal instinct not to let anyone hurt his daughters. He looked genuinely remorseful and admitted he had reevaluated everything that happened. He said he was the one who was wrong and that we shouldn't have to apologize for anything, as we didn't start the conflict. He was shocked by all the details Caleb had revealed, as he'd been completely in the dark. He confessed that he had noticed Sarah's odd behavior, but had dismissed it, which he now regretted. The way Caleb spoke to her had simply triggered his protective instincts. He said if someone had spoken to me that way, he would have reacted the same. But he now realized it wasn't his place to intervene without knowing the full story. He wanted to apologize to both of us for causing so much turmoil right before our wedding. I was so relieved he understood. I told him it wasn't his fault, but that the person who did try to ruin the wedding needed to leave. I had only invited her for him, and she had chosen to create this mess. That's when he told us he had already asked her to leave that morning. That was why he hadn't been in contact all day. He'd spent the entire morning trying to convince her to apologize to us first. After realizing her fault, he wanted her to make it right, but she refused and started arguing with him. He told her I was just as much his daughter as she was, and he would not let her spoil my wedding. After hours of fighting, she finally left. By the time it was over, he was emotionally exhausted. Thankfully, we reached out and resolved everything before the big day. Update 3. Hello, everyone. It's been about a week since I married Caleb. It still feels wonderful and strange to say that. Everything worked out. Just before the ceremony, as my father was about to walk me down the aisle, we had a quiet moment where he apologized again for his behavior, and I wholeheartedly forgave him. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and I didn't want to hold on to any negativity. What mattered was that he recognized his mistake, and despite his initial knee-jerk reaction, he made things right. I know some people in the comments felt I forgave him too easily, but I was getting married the next day. I didn't have the luxury of time to debate whether I wanted him there. I knew my wedding would feel incomplete without my father. When he apologized, there was no reason not to accept it. And let's not forget, while he initially defended Sarah out of instinct, he later demanded she apologize and then asked her to leave when she refused. I believe his remorse was genuine. Besides, from what I've heard from him over the past week, he is definitely paying for it. His wife is furious about what happened. She was already angry about not being invited to the wedding, which she took as a personal insult. I'm not sure why she expected an invitation. Neither she nor her daughter has ever been particularly kind to me. Whenever I visited, they mostly pretended I didn't exist. It was always clear I wasn't welcome in their home. Why would I want someone like that at my wedding? On top of that, my mother disliked her, which was reason enough for me. So she was already upset. When Sarah came home and told her she'd been kicked out the day before the wedding, she decided I was the villain turning my father against his real family. On my wedding day, she called my father nearly 100 times. Since he returned home, she's been making his life miserable. He's been calling me every other day to vent. I feel terrible for him. All he did was the right thing, and it hasn't gone over well with Sarah or his wife. His wife is insisting that I'm trying to tear their family apart and that I owe them an apology. Sarah has told her mother she won't return home until her father apologizes to her. But my dad is a tough man. He told his wife that he put his foot down. He defended Sarah from Caleb's words, but that was as far as he could go because she was fundamentally in the wrong. He will not support her when she is wrong, and if she can't apologize for trying to belittle me at my own wedding, then he's fine with her not coming home. Since then, his wife has alternated between fighting with him and giving him the silent treatment, but he hasn't budged. I've told him he can call me any time to vent because I think he needs an outlet. I just hope they can sort things out soon. Update 4. Okay, it has been 3 weeks since my last update, and a few days ago, my father moved in with us temporarily. He was having an incredibly difficult time at home, with his wife and Sarah essentially treating him like an outcast for taking my side. I felt awful for how he was being treated, so I told him that if he ever needed to get away, Caleb and I would be happy to have him stay. We have a guest room, so it was no trouble. We had talked it over, and with the wedding chaos behind us, it felt like a good opportunity to spend some quality time together and talk things through properly. He took us up on the offer and has been with us for a few days. We used this time to discuss everything more deeply than we ever have before. It was mostly just the two of us talking, with Caleb present as a supportive observer. I won't go into every detail, but a lot of things were brought into the open. We were honest and vulnerable with each other, and it was incredibly cathartic. I think we both feel a sense of relief. Caleb and I are leaving for our honeymoon next week, and my father is going to stay at our house, which works out perfectly. It gives him more time away from the toxicity at his home, and we don't have to worry about the house while we're gone. We both agreed that by the time we return, it would be best for him to go back and try to work things out with his wife and Sarah. Joking aside, they have been together for a very long time, and I truly don't want to see things end badly for them. It would be incredibly sad. We'll see how things go, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed for the best. In the meantime, Caleb and I are looking forward to our vacation. Update 5. Hi everyone. Caleb and I returned home a few days ago. My father had already let us know he had left and locked up the house. We didn't get much chance to talk for a few days as I was catching up with work and he was also busy. But then he called today with a significant update. He and his wife have decided to go to marriage counseling. Despite his returning home with the intention of mending their relationship, they ended up fighting even more than before. The time he spent at our place, which was meant to give her space, had apparently backfired. She said she felt abandoned and unheard. Things were not going well. I believe counseling is a fantastic step for them. They both agreed that they want to make it work, that they've been together too long not to try, and that despite their issues, they still love each other. As long as that love is there, I believe they can find a way to work through this. For now, the issue with Sarah has been put on the back burner as they focus on their marriage, which is exactly how it should be. If Sarah has any sense, she will support them in this. I'm just so glad they are trying to fix their relationship. I want my father to be happy, and I know he wants the same for me, so this news makes me incredibly hopeful.